Hey everybody, welcome back to another Nature's Always Right episode. Today is going to be a review video all about my new Treadlite Broadfork here. So Treadlite is an American company and it was started by a husband and wife duo, and they run the company and design and build these Broadforks as well. So it's an awesome small business to support here in America. The base comes in many different sizes. You can get 20, 24-inch, or 30-inch. And then they also have different numbers of tines for different purposes. They have a harvesting Broadfork that has about 9 tines, I believe, to make it easier for harvesting root vegetables. Treadlite really offers you a lot of different options for your Broadfork at different sizes, different configurations, and I really like that about them. I got what's called the square foot gardener Broadfork. This is a 24-inch wide Broadfork, and I'm going to discuss why I chose the 24-inch over the 30-inch a little bit later when we go out to the beds and actually use this out for Broadforking. So it's really cool. You can get any of the Treadlite Broadforks either in ash wood handles or in this really strong steel, and the price is really reasonable. So for the square foot gardener, the 24-inch wide one, it's $185 for the Broadfork and the wood handles, and it's $245 if you'd like to get the steel handles. Treadlite does free shipping for all of their Broadforks as well, which is a really great value. So the wood handles are going to be more for lighter use. I'd recommend it for soils that are a bit more nice. They're not as clayey or heavy, but handles like this are going to last a very, very long time. And I just know that from my experience with my Johnny's Broadfork and the wood handles on that, they've never broken. So if you want a little bit lighter Broadfork that eventually after many years, you'll probably have to replace this, but I would imagine it'd be many, many years. If you want something that's more indestructible, then you would go with the steel handles, but the steel is going to be a little bit heavier to use. I am going to show you the best Broadforking technique possible so that it is the least amount of work as possible. Okay, let me show you really simply how to assemble this and put it together. I'm going to show you guys a couple tips on the steel handles really quickly, and then we're going to move on and I'm going to install the wood handles because I envision myself using the wood handles most of the time now that my soil is so good. If I would have had this Broadfork 2 years ago, I would have started with the steel handles initially. Now, after about 2 years, my soil is super soft and easy to work in, so now I think the wood handles make a little bit more sense. So the steel handles, so you can see that the steel handles are pretty hard to take out. The tolerance is very tight, but that's a really good thing in my opinion because it's just going to be stronger. Once you've put this in once and you twist it and take it back out, when you install it, I just recommend twisting it a bunch and take it in and out, and that'll kind of rub some of the paint and get it to fit a little bit more smoothly. All you got to do, of course, is line these holes up. Treadlite provides the screws to install them. Now, if the bar does give you some trouble trying to come out, just use a rubber mallet. But that was the first time I ever took this side off. So now that it's been roughed up a little bit, now it goes in there pretty easy. No issues at all. Okay, so as you can see, this is the new design of the Treadlite Broadforks. It's really smart. So these poles will actually go deep inside and they nest inside of the Broadfork. So it makes it incredibly strong. So for the wood handles, you're gonna notice that they've got this little slit here, and then Treadlite gives you a wedge. Basically, you're gonna push in the wedge. You don't want to go in too far because what this wedge is going to do is expand these and make it have a tighter fit inside of there. If you go too tight, then you wouldn't be able to even put it in to begin with. So you might want to pound it down with the hammer just slightly. Then go ahead and test it. Make sure it still fits. And if that's still pretty loose, you probably go even tighter. A little too tight. If you go too tight, you can use some needle nose pliers and shove something in here and twist, and that'll loosen it so that you can take it out. So then you'll take a straight edge, score it to get it really weak, So then what you'll do is just take a hammer or something, snap off the wedge, and then I'll just make it completely flush. So I got my wedge in there, and it's fitting pretty tight. If you put enough wedge down in there, you should actually have to hit the handles with a mallet to get it to totally get snug. That's the key to knowing if you got the right wedge tightness, is if, you should be able to take this on and off, but you should have to tap it with a hammer a little bit to get it to shove all the way in there. If it's a little bit loose, don't worry about it, it'll be okay. This screw is gonna hold it in. So now normally I would drill a pilot hole for this, but because of how it's set up though, I can't really reach it, so I'm gonna start it. What's awesome is, so if I ever start new ground and I want to put in my steel handles, I can easily just take the screw out, pull these out, put the steel in, and drill in the steel. So it'll be nice to have the option. So before we go use it and check it out, I just want to show you a couple of the different features that this Broadfork has compared to some other Broadforks. So the way these tines are welded, you'll notice the welds go all the way around the entire inside there. So then they drill these holes out here. I'm guessing that's to reduce weight. This feature is something that I think is really cool, and I believe that this is the reason why it's digging so well. So you'll notice it has, the same angle, and then right here at the tip, it goes to an even sharper angle. And what that does, what I believe it does at least, is when you rock back and forth on the Broadfork, it really helps it dig under there, and really, if you just move it back a few times, you're really deep down into the ground. Alright, so let's test out the Broadfork. So as you can see, I've removed and left a little bit of crop residue left, and I added out my compost and amendments, so now it's time to Broadfork. So one of the cool features about this Broadfork that I really like is that it has the rounded top bar here. It's really comfortable for standing on compared to like the square top bar that kind of digs into the bottom of your feet more. The other reason I like how you can rock it. When you rock it, that extra sharp angle that I showed you on the teeth really helps it dig down there. I didn't even do any work. Then as I pull it back, I love that on this Broadfork, this is the 24-inch Broadfork, so it's this width. But on their 30-inch Broadfork, they keep the handles at this same width, which is shoulder length width, which is where we're gonna have most of our power. If we go out a little bit wider, like the Johnny's Broadfork does, we're losing a little bit of that power, and it's just becoming a little bit more difficult to pull back. So I love that they thought about that, and that's part of their design. So here's the reason that I got a 24-inch Broadfork when my beds are 30 inches. So I noticed this when I used my 30-inch Broadfork, that when I went in and I pulled back, when I pull back, a lot more earth is lifted up than just where the tines stop. So if you notice on this 24-inch, we're getting about another 2 or maybe even 3 inches of lift to the side of the tines. Now on a 30-inch Broadfork, that was breaking up the pathways. The pathways are very compacted, and that is going to cause a lot more stress to the tool when I lift it up. It's also going to be a lot more effort for me because I'm lifting up compacted ground. So I actually believe that the ideal Broadfork size for a 30-inch bed is less than 30 inches. So for me, the 24-inch size seems to be just about right. And if you're noticing, as I Broadfork back, it's basically giving lift to my entire bed. So I'm really happy with this. It's a little bit lighter and easier to maneuver, and it's not lifting up my pathways, which is what I really don't want to have happen. So very happy with the 24-inch size for my 30-inch beds. You may want to get a 30-inch Broadfork so you can get that extended lift. And I think if you had wider pathways, maybe it would make more sense in your context, but because I have such skinny pathways, I don't want that lift to be happening in my 8-inch pathways. So I've already Broadforked this first section here, it's done. Now to do the next section, all I'm gonna do is lift it enough that the tines fall back, which is about the distance, the length of my tines. These are 12-inch long tines, I believe. Bring it back to here, stepping on it. Stepping on it first is really good, so that when you step onto the fork, you have more balance. And I've noticed on this broad fork, because it has that sharper angle, when you step on it, you're actually going to be leaning forward more than on a normal broad fork. On my other broad forks, like on a Meadow Creature or my Johnny's broad fork, it would be more straight up and down would be the normal balancing point. If I go back, rock back and forth, it wants to send my weight backwards. So what I found is, on the Treadlite Broadforks, you just want to have it situated slightly more forward than perpendicular, straight up and down. So it'll be slightly more forward, then you can step on it and rock it back and forth, and the balance is perfect. So I'll pull it back just enough to get lift, and that's it. Then I'll lift up the tines, let them fly back, and do the next section. This wide bar, it produces a lot of leverage too. It's another thing I like about the rounded bar design. The weight of these ashwood handles is really nice. It's super light. I love the weight of it actually. It's very nice. So overall, I am super impressed with this Broadfork. I really like it a lot. I think the design is excellent. The price point is excellent. I would definitely buy this Broadfork again in the future. So when using this Broadfork, I've noticed that all the power comes from rocking back and forth. Because of the special teeth design, it has such digging power. It's super easy. So now that I've used both the steel and the wood handles, you can see the flexion of these wood handles. It's completely normal and good. But you know, my soil has a lot of clay in it, especially in the beginning before it started to convert. So it's very heavy. If it was any more hard or heavy than this, I would want to have the steel handles, I think. Just because over time, all this heaviness is just gonna put more stress on the wood and everything. But like I said, I've used my Johnny's this whole time on this property for 1.5 years, and they use skinnier, weaker wood handles than this, and it works fine. So I think that these wood handles are really durable, but in a heavy, rocky, clayey soil situation, the steel handles are gonna be your best bet.